After 4 years, we sit here to tell you, the audience at home, welcome to episode 200 of Friends Talking Nerdy. This is Tim Jousma, and with me, I have the greatest legal mind of the Pacific Northwest, Professor Aubrey.
Hello, everyone.
And joining us all the way from Portland, Maine, the coolest member of the clergy, it is the Reverend Tracy.
Depends on who you ask, but I feel very welcomed, as I always do.
All right. If this is the first time you are listening to this show, welcome. If you like what you hear, remember to like and subscribe to the show, as well as share the show on social media. Follow us on social media and Discord to keep up with us throughout the week. The links to those are in our show description. Episode 200.
Episode 200. Here we are.
Here we
Episode 200. I just wanted to feel included.
It seems like only yesterday we were recording episode 100.
Yes.
Was I on for episode 100? Was I a
were.
part of it yet? I was. Okay. See, this is how great my memory is and how committed I am to everything about this show.
I mean, that was only the first time we had seen each other in person in over 2 years, but yeah,
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, that's not true. We had the whole story where we ran into each other when we talked about that friendship repair thing, right? Like when we ran into each other at Comic-Con and took a second to talk about how healing and magical and joining of a brotherhood Comic-Con can be.
Indeed.
Nice.
But let's roll on with the show here. I know we are enjoying the summer break, but both of us, the professor obviously going back to work teaching and me going back as a student, are looking at going back to school. Tell us about this.
That's right. It is back to school time, and it has really been feeling like back to school here in Portland, Oregon, because the weather has been beautifully cool and crisp and overcast. And so been feeling in a fall kind of mood. Tomorrow, as we record, we will turn the calendar to September. And that always brings around those plaid feelings, those fall color feelings, football games, and getting back to some of our communities that we maybe have that are different during the year than they are during the summer. So it's that kind of interesting time of renewal at the end of the year. So nature around us is folding up, but we are unfurling for the fall. Feels like new beginnings. Don't you think, Tim? Tracy?
Well, I mean, I know even I'm affected by back to school a little bit because, as I've mentioned, I do the whole online gig and helping kids learn how to read. So I can confirm it is very much back in full swing. My job is remote, and it's kind of neat because you kind of have that background feeling of some people are still learning from home and some people are very much in classroom settings. And, it's also no secret. Sometimes I walk the Mr. Reverend to work and get my morning run in, before the humidity just like sinks over all of Maine, which is, we haven't had the cool crisp yet, but we have had some, signs of back to school. It's kind of coming and going, but there's still a lot of humidity and heat going on here. So I will jog home sometimes, from dropping off the Mr. Reverend, walking him to work. And I definitely saw more kiddos getting off of, a lot of times they'll take the public transportation buses to help get them to school if there is not a bus route. Sometimes that is something cities do. Even in downtown Portland, Oregon, they do that, share the city bus and the lines with the kids to help out. So it is most definitely in the air. I have plenty to work on during the day now. So my summer vacation is over. What about you, Tim? Are you starting classes?
I'm going to be starting classes near the end of September, so I still have a couple of weeks here, but the feeling is definitely in the air. Now, as a kid, I always dreaded this time of year. Summers in the 80s, when summer during school, I think it is a fact that summer breaks in the 80s were longer than they were in the 90s.
Much longer.
Oh, yeah. Like I never went back to school before my birthday. I'm August 16th, by the way, for any fans who just feel like throwing me anything for my birthday because, you feel guilty that you missed it. Yeah, but I remember I never went back to school before my birthday. And then slowly but surely, it's kind of started eking back like to the beginning of August. Now I know not everybody started yet. Like there's some people that are starting, like my step kiddos are starting tomorrow, which is Wednesday. I know the show won't come out until Saturday, but they'll have already started. But it almost seems late, but it's interesting the very different schedules, that across the states and even across from city to city, it can be very different when kids start school. And that's something I didn't really have an awareness of.
Yeah, and for me, it was as a kid, the big signifier that summer was coming to an end was the Jerry Lewis telethon. Because it was Memorial Day weekend, and literally it seemed like during my elementary school years, the day after the end of the Jerry Lewis telethon was always the first day of school. And
it was
so
on Labor Day weekend.
Labor Day weekend, sorry. But it just, the fact that it was always that, for the longest time I hated Jerry Lewis because of that, and just like it brought bad memories. But having said that, when I had kids of my own, school time this time of year, the feeling ended up changing a lot, because the moment they were able to go off to school, it's like, I got a break. Oh,
summer's over. Oh, thank God.
Oh, yeah. And then sometimes I remember I had mixed feelings because I wasn't a cool kid. Like at any point, I don't recall ever like looking forward to seeing my peer group. But at the same time, I was really tired of only seeing the same 4 people. So, when you're in small town Texas, it's not, bumping off to go meet your friends at the mall and stuff. Like most of them were going out of town or doing their own shit. Like they didn't stay in that tiny town. They went about and visited people. And then, my brother and I just kind of sat there and waited until our own vacation. But at the same time, like it was stressful. But then that was also one of the few times that I got new clothes. So that was kind of cool, being a hand-me-down kid every now and then, about once a year. Budget slotted for new clothing. So it was kind of a mixed emotions back then.
I hated that. I hated that because my mother fucking loved plaid. She thought plaid was awesome. She thought plaid with like little silver snap buttons was awesome. I swear, I say this and people think it's a joke, but it's worse than that. That is appropriate, but we're talking just like 70s plaid,
Oh, gotcha. Like that real tight, like 20 different colors, and you don't know what they were actually going for a theme.
I mean, I tell people this and they think it's a joke, but I'm serious. I swear she dressed me up as like I was cosplaying Sylvester Stallone from the movie Rhinestone, just like a Michigan version of Porter Wagner.
And you are like the least flashy person I know. So it was like you were being forced into, because I would have loved that. I played dress up almost every day, and I often was sent home from school for wearing inappropriate clothing.
Just imagine being tall, awkward, introverted, having no social skills, and yet being dressed to look like a social lighthouse.
Yeah.
It's like I was the bat signal. Everybody noticed me coming into the room.
Right. And then that's like the performance. Like you're like, there's nothing gonna follow that, guys.
Oh man, I get you though. My mother was like way off base, like, hey, what we know about the Reverend Tracy now, like the deal was I had to pick at least one dress for school picture day. And that was like the big bartering point. Like you can pick whatever the hell else you want inside this budget, but you have to pick one dress for school picture day. And I just love the series of miserable photos of me wearing dresses. Like if you ever saw the Drew Barrymore version of Cinderella, have either of you seen that movie?
Oh God, my daughter loved that movie.
Okay, so there's this scene where Drew Barrymore, like not her obviously, but the child that is playing the child version of her rendition of Cinderella, like comes up to the door to meet her stepmother, and she was in this lovely dress, but by the time she gets to the door, it's just like she's gotten into a wrestling match with her little dude friend, and she's just covered in mud. And that is very much how I felt. I felt very out of place in dresses. Like even though it wasn't covered in mud, it still just didn't seem like it felt right wearing it. But what about you, Aubrey? Did you get to kind of pick what you want? Or did you ever have that parent forcing a thing on you for clothing time?
Well, we definitely had back to school shopping. And as far as I recall, back to school shopping, I got to pick what I wanted. Like I wasn't forced to consume something I didn't want. But my mom, at the same time, I had to have something appropriate to wear to school. Like what I would pick would be like tutus and costumes and pointy hats. And like I would just pick shit that I loved that I saw that was like sparkly or had paisleys on it or whatever. And so I feel like my mom was stuck between a rock and a hard place, because if she'd let me choose, I would have no clothes to wear to school. And so she couldn't let me choose, but she tried to like make me want appropriate things. It was just hard for me to want appropriate things. So what would happen is I would buy a bunch of weird stuff and then I would have no clothes to wear to school. So my sister, who's 2 years older than me, I would just borrow her clothes, her school clothes to wear to school, which she did not enjoy. And so it created quite a bit of conflict, resulting in my sister putting a padlock on her door.
Oh my God.
There were like chases and like knockdown drag out fights, all because
That's my bra.
I couldn't choose appropriate clothing.
Oh God. And God help you if you got a stain on anything, right? Like if you couldn't get it out.
Oh, I got stains on everything. I was
Oh, of course.
like I ruined everything I touched. I was a terrible kid. I really feel bad for my parents.
Now, one thing I would like to know, now, obviously the college experience is different than, the high school and elementary school experience, but how has the back to school experience been to you over the years as a professor?
Yeah, back to school is always an exciting time as a professor, right? It's the end of the summer break. And the idea of the summer break is that you have a chance to relax and really explore your other interests so that you can come back refreshed and ready to be that person, that font of patience and wisdom that students need to have as a guide in their learning. So, it's an exciting time. And we have the one college-wide meeting we have every year is at the beginning of the term. And so you get a little bit of energy from that. And it's always exciting to meet a new class every term. And sort of what I really love about my job that is structural to it is the cyclical nature of it. So I love okay, there are 3 terms and each term's going to unfold in a certain way. And there's 12 weeks and here's how they go. And here's the start and the end. And here's the next one. And there's always something starting or something ending, something new happening. So it's an exciting time back to school for a professor.
All right.
Do you ever get anxious about it though? Like, because I would imagine there'd be a little bit of that, right? But you don't teach small kids, you teach adults, right?
I teach adults, yeah.
Okay, you teach adults, but I don't know. See, I tried to pretend what it would have been like had I actually followed certain careers that I kind of started to go to school for, but didn't finish. And one of them was I did consider being an English teacher. And some weird thought that hit me one day was, I don't want to be an anxious mess at the end of every summer because I'm that worked up over getting that asshole in my class. So I was just curious, like, do you have any element of that as a professor, or do you pretty much just, you're just kind of used to it and know how to deal with them at this point?
I mean, I think there is some, like, I have quite a bit of experience in the classroom. I've been teaching since 2007. So 13, 14 years of managing a classroom, and you just get sort of immune to a lot of things, including just nerves. Like I used to get nervous about my presentations, or somebody's going to ask me a question, I wouldn't know the answer. And like that all happened and I survived all of it and it's all fine. So now I don't really get nervous, and I don't worry about like, oh, I hope I won't have that student, or I hope my class is full of these students. Like part of the fun of it is the diversity of the experience with the students. That's really what's different every term, is that it's a different group of students. And there's usually always at least one that is problematic. So you just going to be a different flavor of problem, but there's always going to be somebody who's the person who needs you to be extra that term.
Now, obviously, I'm not going to ask you to give us a story because you legally cannot, but how do you deal with that? Obviously, you have to vary it up depending on the person, but there must be some general strategy for that one particular student. Because I know, as you know, coming back as a student myself, I've seen a couple of examples of that with some of my other professors and their students. So let us know in general, how do you prepare for that?
Well, I think there's two, just to unpack that a little bit, there's at least two things. One is, how is the person affecting the rest of the class? Sometimes there can be a student who's problematic for me privately, but has absolutely no impact on the rest of the class, which is a different thing to deal with than a student who is causing difficulties for the class in whatever way. Person?
That was an actual question in the class that a student asked, what is third person?
And that's a fair question in a writing class. If you didn't know that, you would want to know that, right?
I don't, it's the class that it was in. It wasn't a basic English class. It was my comic book class. And those type of classes, you would think someone would know that by then, or, ask the professor one-on-one. I don't know, but that's just me also. And me, I'm also.
Students are much more petty about their co-students than professors are towards their students.
And I'm also I wasn't going to accuse Tim of it, but as long as that thought's out there.
Look, let's be honest. We have 200 episodes showing evidence of me not being the most patient person in the world. So,
and I think that's why he has me here now.
I mean, maybe being a professor, being a counselor, being someone who really deals with people on that level, maybe that's not for you, Tim.
Oh, God, no. God, no.
Yeah. And it's funny because I've gotten a similar question, which is, I guess, what made me think to ask you, because I did so much of the coaching for, I did Odyssey of the Mind after school and creative problem solving, and I coached Lego Mindstorm. And everyone's like, what about that asshole kid? And I was like, what asshole kid? Because I guess I've gotten incredibly lucky. Like, even reading stories from other people who coach or teach kids, like maybe I just jive on a level with them where I've really lucked out. But even like the asshole kid in quotes, which, I don't really think that kids are assholes. I think they're mostly just kind of figuring stuff out and possibly mirroring from their parents. But like, I don't know. I've never really had that problem with them. Like, I guess I kind of have a mentality, if he's being a jerk to me, or he or she can go play by themselves, like, I don't have to interact with them. And that usually fixes some of it. But I don't think you can really pull that same technique with adults.
It's interesting. I used to work with teenagers. So like the age, like 12 and up is kind of folks that I have worked with personally. And I think I use the same techniques with I don't feel like a punitive approach to teenagers is effective, right? So I always try to teach, or treat teenagers like adults to the extent that they would let you.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and so I sort of adapt that for all people. I view all people as needing
basically the golden rule. You treat them with the respect you want them to give you. And if you're not treating them with respect, they're not going to respect you back.
Right. And sometimes they're not going to respect you back anyway.
Right? Definitely. You can't control it.
The only person you can control is yourself. And so that idea of being, how can I be as aware of my own issues and triggers and traumas so that I recognize when I'm being triggered in the classroom? That's the only time it is difficult. as if somebody has somehow pushed a button for me. And it doesn't happen very often, but it has definitely happened in the past where it's just like, I need a break. Like I need to get out because
you flip a desk over or something.
That's how you work with adults. See, it's different because it's funny as you said, like the 12 and up, and like my more experience was K through 12. But I didn't even go as far as 12th grade. Like I really did like K through 5th grade, which is right around that age group. And I think maybe why the leaving them alone works is because kids are in that stage developmentally where they should be seeking bonds with people. But yeah, like adults, it doesn't necessarily work just to leave them alone to be a butthead. Like sometimes you have to kind of address it and do the communication thing with kids. You can almost pull that off like, well, all right, well, if you're going to be a jerk, nobody's going to want to be around you. And you can almost like use that drive that they have to interact with humans to get them to possibly act a bit better or reflect on how they just pulled Susie's hair because they wanted the same magnetic blocks that she had.
Right. Yeah. So, I think it's an interesting time of year for all age groups and all of us, because we have that sort of cultural, just because we have decided that summer break is something that should happen along the way. Because we have summer break, we now have go back to school, and it's a huge marketing and commercial time of year. So
it's the second or third biggest sales event of the year. Yeah, with of course Black Friday being number one.
Yeah, and they can use data from back to school to sort of extrapolate what they think is going to happen over the holidays.
Oh, that reminds me of like marketing that the big retailers use. Now this father at home got the mail one time, got an ad from Target that was addressed to his daughter, and it was for maternity clothes. And he got upset and went to Target and said why. And then he found out that the reason is that if somebody searches for that, their system's going to find out and they're going to send you ads about that. He found out his daughter was pregnant because of Target.
Ooh, man.
That's some strange social engineering.
Yeah.
Ooh, see, that's Google Skynet. Google Skynet does it again, ruins birth announcements. Not as bad as the fiery gender reveal of last year, but, still kind of ruining some days there, Google Skynet.
But at least one company is doing something positive.
Yeah, I think it's really neat. I get to share an update with everybody because I was one of the people that was protest Pogo protest, when Pokemon Go decided to basically at the beginning of the pandemic, just to kind of give the wave tops of it super quick, in case you didn't hear that other episode and are not a Pogo player. Pokemon Go, when the pandemic first hit, they had done all this increase so that you could interact with Pokemon stops from a further distance and the gyms, etc. Well, they had very abruptly taken that away, and the internet screamed very, very loudly about this. And really, it turns out what they ultimately responded to was a very well put together open letter that addressed all sorts of concerns with taking away the restrictions. Some of the things that they named specifically that helped outline the importance of a permanent increase to these ranges included points about safety. For example, some kids crossing streets when they don't really need to cross that street just to go hit that Pokestop. You want to encourage that less. And we do have kids on there that are 13, 14 and playing. The other point that I think really probably had a lot of pull was talking about people with disabilities. There are people in wheelchairs, for example, that couldn't hit Pokestops that they had gotten used to being able to hit because they were on top of a hill. I think of maybe like the Japanese Rose Garden in Portland, Oregon. There's a lot of ramps and a lot of things you have to go through, whereas possibly somebody was able to at least go to the area and play before they've taken it away. Something that I kind of wish I would have loved to have been seen outlined a little bit more, which was something that was my concern, is a lot of people with social anxieties don't want to go and stand in the middle of a bunch of people if there is an event such as a raid, which is something that would draw a bunch of people to physically one location. That would keep them away either from the establishment or the game or however you wanted to look at that. So that was what Niantic officially responded to. And I did want to quote it because I actually thought it was really cool that it worked. When you see a company be actually responsive to somebody putting together something very well spoken and making good points and getting it signed and passing it around the community. But they admitted it. They said, we have heard your input loud and clear. And so to address the concerns you have raised, we are taking the following actions. We are assembling an internal cross-functional team to develop proposals designed to preserve our mission of inspiring people to explore the world together, while also addressing specific concerns that have been raised regarding interaction distance. We will share the findings of this task force by the next in-game season change, which is tomorrow, Wednesday, September 1st. So we're going to see how much more got changed, but they did at least announce that they are going to they went back to that extended range. So good news, everybody. If you had that portal that you really didn't want to cross the street to go get, you can now go back to getting those stops again. So I just thought it was a very good way to respond to it. You know, a lot of companies could just ignore it and do whatever they wanted, but they did ultimately choose to not just undo the update, but they're actually doing a task force and looking into more ways that they didn't realize the game was being restricted from other players. So ultimately, I just think it's a really cool story from Niantic.
Yeah, I mean, granted, with the video game industry in the shape it's in today, with I think at least 3 that I'm aware of video game companies having issues with workplace problems with sexism and all that stuff. You know, it didn't shock me when I heard that the company put those restrictions on in the first place, and we talked about that on our show in the archives. I forgot the specific episode. You know, it's good for them that, you know, they ultimately did listen, but, you know, companies make decisions based on numbers, that the numbers they feel are going to make them the most money. And it should be a little scary that, you know, for a while they thought they could make the most money by, you know, making it to where the general public would not be as safe, because this game is very much, it forces you to get out of the house, to be active, to get out in public. And, you know, doing that in the times of a pandemic, just not smart, you know. And if you want to keep people safe and keep them playing your game, don't kill your customers.
Exactly. I mean, I'm pretty sure I did mention it in the last one too. My reactionary tinfoil hat was, I don't care if your sponsors what floor traffic. I mean, granted, I never got to confirm if that had anything to do with why they took away the extension to the ranges. But yeah, I mean, we did talk about game companies, they have to make money somewhere. There are a lot of people who play for free. I am technically one of them. The only money I put into it is Google Rewards, which something that I got to nerd out about was, thank you for fixing this, because I was so close to being able to make it rain Pokecoins all over my character. So I can do that again soon. I'm almost up to $10, folks. Just saying, $10 in rewards gets you 1,200 Pokecoins. So that's how I do it. I don't spend any real money, but some people do. And a lot of people really did stop spending money. And it's interesting because when you read these articles about Niantic and Pokemon Go, by the way, like they'll randomly throw out there how much money they're coming in. But I'm actually curious, where does all that money come from? Like, is it mostly from the people actually putting in real life money to get fake life coins? Or is any of this having anything to do with those physical stops, any that are featured, any that are actually a gym versus a stop? Like, that's information I haven't fully dug into yet, but I am very relieved. I was really quite upset when I had heard that they had retracted it, especially because it's not like the Delta variant is news at that point. Like, it had already been here, been in conversation. So why the hell would you take away something that helped maintain distance and still encourage people to get outside, right? Because there is also fighting that urge to just stay in your cave. And I know that is an urge I have very much fought, because that's not really good for you mentally either. But I also didn't want to go out and, you know, the one thing that may be encouraging me to get out, also encouraging me to go hang out around a bunch of people that I don't really know, like if they're vaccinated or not. You know, not that I think you should have to wear like a sign or anything, but that's why I've primarily stuck with hanging out with my friends during this time, is that at least we've had those conversations. Even my friends who have chosen not to, we have had that conversation so that I know, you know, when we're hanging out, how I would like to treat that. But yeah, as far as encouraging large groups of people to accumulate around each other for raids, because the other thing they took away that I'm curious if they're going to address is there was something called a remote raid pass. And that is exactly what it sounds like. There would be an event, and a raid is a timed thing, by the way. It's not always happening. It's a special fight at a gym. And you could have as many of those as you wanted. And now they've restricted it so that you can only have 3. And I don't know if that was to make it so people actually used them to do the raids from a distance, or if that's some kind of weird thing where they're trying to push you into going physically. But I would be interested to see what other changes come out, I guess, tomorrow. I'm sure they'll have another blog post.
Yeah, we'll obviously keep the audience updated about that, whether it be on the show here or on our Discord or Facebook group or social media outlets, which you can find in the show descriptions. Yes, got the plug in.
Yay, see there, we did it.
Yes, so anything more about Pokemon you want to talk about?
Oh, no, unless you guys have any more back and forth on opinions of real life games or VR games in a time like this, because, I mean, it's interesting because Harry Potter hasn't made the news, and that one is also location based. I haven't played it, so I don't know how crowding dependent that one is compared to a raid with a mega monster where you really do need 5 or 6 people to beat it.
Well, if J.K. Rowling is a part of it, then it's probably the most tone deaf thing around, I guess. You know, as far as those types of games, I've never really gotten into them, and the biggest reason why is that they're battery killers. I mean, the time I hung out with your friends playing Ingress, you know, of all of them, and I think you even had to have some extra battery packs, and it's just like, I don't want to do that. You know?
Oh yeah, that's a standard, like pretty much. And that's what I thought was so funny about Pokemon coming out, was that they made all the Pokeball shaped power banks, like that made some fucking difference. I'm like, don't buy that. Get this one from Anker. It doesn't suck. Because pretty much we all had, like, you know, it was also kind of cool that most of us worked in tech, so a lot of us had already had power banks, like for various other reasons, which was kind of my case. And then I just wound up investing in others. But yeah, total battery killer, but still, you know, kind of fun. So I don't know, maybe I'll put up my friend code if anybody wants to be my friend.
Put it on the Discord.
I think you should. You should put it on the Discord.
Yeah, I need friends. I did discover there's a Pokemon Discord, so I can actually go and like chat specifically about Pokemon. Not that I really ever do, because it's like, people. So I just mostly just get all of the pings on it and respond to nothing. And then it's like, okay, where's the Friends Talking Dirty page? That's the one that I feel safe talking in.
Well, okay, let's talk about movies. This show has been on the air since 2017, and there have been a number of wonderful movies that have come out that we've talked about on the show here. And I thought, let's go back through the sands of time here. We'll do Tim's Nerdy 5, talking about my favorite movies that have come out, 5 favorite movies that have come out during the course of the show. I will say the movie, give you my thoughts, and if you both have any thoughts on them, let's hear them. The first one, the year the show started, 2017, the very first movie that was ever mentioned on Friends Talking Nerdy, John Wick Chapter 2. I absolutely love that movie. I mean, just it's the best American action movie in the past 25, 30 years, easily. The fight scenes are probably some of the absolute best American fight scenes. They're the closest to Hong Kong that an American movie is probably going to get, because you know Keanu and all the other actors spent time training for those fight scenes, and they didn't do the cutaway or the shaky cam as much. You felt the violence and everything, and you cared for the characters, even though it's a silly, wacky world. The fact that the first film brought you in just because a dog got killed and the rampage continues, I absolutely loved it. What are your thoughts on John Wick Chapter 2?
Haven't seen it.
Oh, really? Oh, man. So I'm struggling because I know I've seen it, but I am just one of those people that I can't remember. Like, I remember it at one point because didn't he have a different dog
Yeah, this was he had a pit bull in the second one. This was John Wick Chapter 2 is where he did have to go overseas to kill somebody. He had a fist fight, a big fight with Common, and then it ended with John Wick at the Continental killing somebody on the grounds of the Continental, which caused him to be excommunicado. Which
Gotcha. See, it's like, I know I've seen 1 and 2, and then whenever 3 came out, I'm like, all right, like this is ridiculous. But I do remember when 2 came on and I saw this dog and I'm like, this dude's not going to learn. If anything happens to that dog, I'm out. I'm done. I'm breaking up with this series, but not Keanu Reeves, because Keanu Reeves is a delight. And I love, he's very Zen person. If you've ever read any of his quotes in his life philosophy, but he is somebody that at least I'm not afraid to be a fan of. But we've talked about owning these because we did really like them. But I'm one of those people that I think for me to really talk about a movie, I have to see it a few times. And maybe that's just a little bit of my ADD. You know, because if it's not like the focus, then I've accidentally trailed off and been focusing on something else. But I repeat watch stuff for that very reason. I loved the first one, though. I remember just absolutely loving it.
Yeah, that first one, I didn't even see it in theaters. I didn't even hear about it. And then when somebody told me about the premise, it's just like, that's it, you know, but that's all it needed to be. And it was just that series has done some wonderful things for modern American action movies. And John Wick Chapter 2, definitely one of my faves. Let's go to the second one here. This came out in 2018. This involves a Marvel character, but it is not a Marvel Studios movie. I made sure not to have a Marvel Studios movie on my list because I've talked about them enough on the show. You know?
Tim likes Marvel. Newsflash. If anybody was curious into nerddom, Tim is a fan of Marvel.
I have verbally filleted them enough.
Okay. Filleted's a fun word. Anyway.
All right. Maybe that can be a t-shirt design.
There we go. Friends talking nerdy. Let's talk about getting filleted.
Anyway, this one is from Sony Studios. It's an animated movie written and directed by the guys that did Lego Batman. It is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. What this is, it tells the story of Miles Morales, who was created by Portland resident Brian Michael Bendis in the Ultimate Comics universe. He was half African-American, half Spanish kid in Brooklyn that got bit by a spider, had the powers and proportions of same as a spider as well, because he took over when Peter Parker in the Ultimate Comics died. But just overall beautiful film, some of the best animation I've ever seen. Being that it says Spider-Verse, they have a lot of different versions of Spider-Man. Like they have Spider-Ham. They have.
Yeah, I was gonna say, was that the one with the pig? Because I remember the Spider-Ham, and I'm assuming that was a little bit more of a comic relief character. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, granted, Spider-Ham is definitely from the comics, but yeah. I mean, how can you have like a gritty, hardcore action version of Spider-Ham? You know, maybe Zack Snyder's Spider.
Yeah, well, I mean, apparently he was voiced by John Mulaney, who is one of my favorites. So I didn't know that, and that makes me almost want to go and get it. I just noticed pulling it up really quick that Nicolas Cage was in it, and I was like,
Spider-Man
they just snuck some people in there.
Yeah, he played Spider-Man Noir. Chris Pine played the Earth 616 Peter Parker. That's the main comic book continuity, but just beautiful film, and it really, for an animated superhero movie, this is like the closest I've seen a movie like this come to actually making it seem like a comic book is alive.
Yeah.
So, let me guess, you haven't seen it.
Haven't seen that one.
Yeah.
So this is the segment called Tim's Seen It and Obs and the Rev have not. But the last name I'm going to throw out there just because I wanted to pull up the cast really fast just because I saw John Mulaney. But also Liev Schreiber. Like apparently he's still around and in stuff from time to time. I was like, oh, is that Liev Schreiber?
Yeah, Liev Schreiber does have, I think it's, what's that? Ray Donovan, I think, is the show on Showtime. So
Okay.
he has a cable show. I mean, he's getting work. I agree with you. I think he should be a lot bigger, but he's still out there, and yeah. But
Yeah, he's a that's guy that I never understood why he never moved away from being, oh, it's that guy. Because I felt like he's really talented, like in what I have seen him in. So it was just, I thought it was cool to kind of see that face when I was scrolling through there. But that being said, I have not seen it, but I am proud that I was able to contribute to the conversation.
there we go. So let's move on to the third one. This came out in 2019, and I even recorded a bonus episode detailing my thoughts about it in the archives. Stars Tom Hanks. It's a Beautiful Day in the Neighborhood.
I've seen that one.
I saw that in theaters, and the first frame of the film just crying my eyes out. I love the fact that they framed it as if it was an actual episode of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. That blew my mind right there. I didn't think that something like that could have been done, but they did it, and yet it was like, in all honesty, it really did feel like an episode of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood for adults. Yeah.
Is that one that you've seen, Aubrey?
Haven't seen that one.
Okay, well, we'll just go to me then.
What did you think about that?
Well, and just to kind of, if anybody's heard, because I had talked about it once before whenever I did see it, because we had gotten it on the cheap, just bought the DVD, and I was like, oh, hey, I love Tom Hanks, and Mr. Rogers is cool. It was a really good movie. It was very entertaining. The only neg I really had on it was I felt like it was too much blurring reality with a pretend story. It was lightly based off of a friendship he had with the interviewer, but a lot of that story was kind of made up for the point of the production in the movie, which is okay. It's just a lot of people tend to take that and be like, oh, well, this is now fact. And that's not the producer's fault. It's just something that gets me. I like whenever a story is about a real person and they keep it pretty true to the tale. Like one of my all-time favorite stories is Hacksaw Ridge. I'm not very much into war movies, but I loved that they did not have to take anything and really manipulate it. They actually removed things that were real because they thought it was going to get too unrealistic for people to believe. So that's it. It was I still want to emphasize, very good movie. And people kind of taking things as, oh, well, this is about a real person, therefore all of this must be true, is not technically on them because they didn't put anything on there like this is based on true events. That's supposed to be what you're looking for, but it just does that little gray area of blending that's not my personal favorite whenever it comes to movies.
And I respect that opinion. If anything, I would say, I would respond by saying, look at it more than anything like a fan fiction version of Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood episode. Because I don't. One, his widow, she was alive at the time, and helped in terms of the production of the movie. So she obviously had to give it her blessing, and I don't think she would have done that if it's something that Fred, if he was alive, if it's something he would not have been comfortable with. So I feel comfortable as a fan myself that again, I'm not dismissing your concern, and I get it. But for me, I'm comfortable enough that this would be something that I feel he would approve, because it talked specifically about the same messages that he talked about for the kids. So
Yeah, and then it kind of really spoke to those kids who were kids, or in my case, I wasn't really watching a lot of TV back when I was a kid and he was airing, mostly because I wasn't born yet. But it does kind of almost continue those lessons that he tried to give to, kids back then who are now adults. So it's almost like it got to grow up a little bit with that same demographic that got to see the live shows. So there was that part that was neat. And yeah, I'm not saying don't watch it by any means. That is 1000% a me preference. When it's about a real person, I just prefer it to be closer to the story, of reality. But yeah, totally 100%. And I definitely see your point about teaching those lessons, because it did not pull any punches. I don't know if that's one I would want to watch with the kids, especially if we're not already having that good conversational level of what I mean? The kids are different. It's rated PG, but it does cover some very darker end of topics that you should be prepared to have questions about if you're going to watch it with a kid.
And Mr. McFeely's in the movie.
Nice.
So that is awesome there. So let's move on to the next one. The Streak is Broken. We have seen this together.
Oh, okay.
In the theater, actually. This is the last movie I saw in theater before the pandemic hit. That is Birds of Prey, or the emancipation of the fantabulous emancipation of one Miss Harley Quinn. Awesome movie. For me, it's important to watch movies like this as a white male because, when you have an action movie, a superhero movie that's starring a woman, that's directed by a woman, that's written by a woman, support that. Because more of that needs to be made, and especially when it's well written and well acted, fun throughout, and little things I noticed too. Thanks to reviews and whatnot, on little things that I don't think I would have necessarily noticed, but that add a little female touch. Like there's a fight scene, and like Black Canary has her hair is going wild, and then Harley Quinn hands her a hair tie. Or Harley Quinn at the beginning after she breaks up with Joker, and Margot Robbie in that movie as Harley Quinn. If there was, Christopher, just as much as Christopher Reeve was born to play Superman, Margot Robbie was born to play Harley Quinn. That was a perfect match in heaven. Let's finally hear your thoughts on a movie on this list.
Well, let me tell you, Tim, I did watch this movie, and it was at least an hour long. And it was filmed on some type of technology that was really good.
I love this so much right now.
It wasn't my favorite movie, but it was an entertaining romp.
Okay. but I'm laughing here because that's the beauty of film. We are both right here. The films can mean something to one person and not mean something to another person, and they are both right. So I'm not taking it offended.
Right. You would not have been sitting next to me in the theater openly weeping at Jane Eyre the way that I was. So we just have different tastes in film.
Yeah. No.
Yeah, not wrong, just different.
Yeah, just different.
All right. What about you, Reverend? Have you seen Birds of Prey?
I have not yet. I know it's one that I do want to watch. I consider myself a little bit of a Harley Quinn fan. One of the things I want to do one day that's on my tick list of cosplay is I want to do a steampunk Harley and Joker with my partner. He has given me permission to play dress up with him. So I am stoked to do that one day, including making like a really big hammer with some kind of fun kapow thing, a little bit more to the throwback to the old Harley. But I've loved most renditions of Harley. But from the snippets I've seen of this particular actress and her voice work and how she does it, I can't help but agree. It just seems like she was somehow made in some kind of tube to be the real life Harley Quinn. So it's something I do want to watch. I've heard she's got very good chemistry with the cast, and that it worked really well for a little bit female power, which sometimes makes you a little with movies, because I almost feel like they go a little bit more yah woman, and sometimes that can distract from it overall being a good movie where you didn't need to constantly say that message of yah women.
Yeah, this is not like Avengers Endgame where all of the women had to have the one fight scene together, or Captain Marvel where the fight scene where I'm Just a Girl is playing. That's a little too obvious. I get your point there.
Yeah, and it's just, I've had a lot of those messages since being a youngster, and I just kind of feel like there was a point in our movies where that was too much the focus. I did want to the female Ghostbusters. I really wanted to, but there was kind of a little bit of that element there. It wasn't as loud as in other situations where I've seen it. But yeah, I heard that they kind of had a really good balance of it. It is on my tick list of something to watch at some point. I just remember my girl child had very disappointedly told me that she had to go to her room because she wasn't allowed to watch Birds of Prey. was like, yeah, probably not, kiddo. Like at the time she was 10. So I'm thinking probably not with the rating on that one. And I know, kind of how crude, violent, and cursy they get. So good call. But hopefully I will see it some point. I haven't gone on my way to see it yet, but I probably will sooner than later because it's overdue.
Well, if she couldn't watch Birds of Prey, certainly couldn't watch the last one on the list. And that is from this year, The Suicide Squad, which is a recent release. And we have talked about that a bit on the show, so I won't go into that too in depth. But
I liked that one.
Okay.
I liked it.
Well, let's hear your thoughts on that.
Yay, Aubrey.
Yay, I liked it. It had fun characters that had cute outfits on and looked cute. And the whole movie had really good visual effects and some like gags that were funny. And it was just entertaining through the whole thing.
Yes. Funny. I mean, the characterization alone is great. You care for each and every person. And I think that was like the big missing ingredient from the first film. But the director on hand for that first film was still dealing with a Warner Brothers that was rather intrusive, so he didn't get the version of the film that he wanted anyway. But another chance for Harley Quinn to do her thing, and I mean, she's great in the film. John Cena as Peacemaker, another WWE wrestler in the movies, and he was really, really good in his performance. Idris Elba as Deadshot, and I think my absolute favorite, Sylvester Stallone as King Shark. I mean, the hand.
I feel like I need to see that just to see Sylvester Stallone at something. And John Cena. I love John Cena. Funny little trivia fact on him, I guess. I remember reading at one point that he had done a movie with Amy Schumer, like back when she was just suddenly in a bunch of movies there for a hot second.
Yeah.
And there is a scene where they're like making out pretty hot and heavy. And I guess his girlfriend or fiance or whoever she is, his partner in real life, did not know about that scene. And there was a little article that slipped out there about how they had this fight about it. I mean, they smoothed it over, but I just thought that was funny. I was like, oh, okay.
Part of that may have been scripted because his girlfriend, fiance at the time, who went by the ring name Nikki Bella, was in the WWE, and her and her sister have a reality show on E that they kind of, real life events happen. So a lot of times, like, stuff would be planted in like TMZ or stuff like that, for problems to just talk about them in the show. A lot of it was created reality, but that's pretty fair for reality shows in general. So
oh, cool. I didn't know that. I'll take it.
Well, anyway, 200 episodes. We've gone it's a long journey to get here. Reverend Tracy, do you have any thoughts?
Well, I mean, I know I was a little bit of a late ad. I know Tim's been very open about, we'd come up with the show together. I wasn't able to join it for a long time there. And I have been really grateful. There have been times where my anxiety has even fucked with me some on it, where I had thought about not doing it anymore. But ultimately, I've really enjoyed being a part of this. It's been really fun. And I really like seeing how much it's grown now. I know, we just kind of started a little bit of merchandise. So if you guys want to support us and get a shirt that you're going to have to explain to every person you meet, go over there, help us out. Maybe we can make this even more of a thing. And Discord's been really fun. I even kind of made a joke earlier, I feel like the Friends Talking Nerdy crowd is like my safe space. Like I can make public comments and not have somebody go on my profile and try to make me feel physically threatened. So it's been really cool, like getting to talk to people. Like I had a really cool conversation with Tim's sister, talking more about the Mayim Bialk, her expressing her opinion about vaccines. And that's something that I think I would really be missing. I don't miss water cooler talk at an office, but given that I'm mostly in my home now and doing remote gigs, it's been nice to have that outlet too. So overall, I've appreciated the outlet. I've totally just let Tim just let me know if I'm still doing okay. If I'm still cool, I'll keep showing up. And if not, I'll go fuck off and find something else to do. But it's nice to have that sense of purpose, and people seem to enjoy listening to us nerd out about random shit. So I'm down to keep the party going. What about you guys?
Professor, what do you got to say?
Well, this show for me has been a huge part of my relationship with you, Tim. Our second date was recording an episode of this podcast. So I feel like almost the podcast has been my constant companion as I've gotten to know you. And when we first started talking to each other, you were like, just go listen to the podcast. You want to know me? Just go listen to the podcast. So I've listened to most of the episodes of the podcast, almost all 200 of them. And the show has definitely gone through phases and changes and stages, but I think it has, what has always done is that sort of earnest attempt at constant improvement. Like the show hasn't remained stagnant. There's always a new segments that you guys are adding or talking about. There are always new people coming on the show, and the topics are always topical to what's going on. And I think it's a great show. I really enjoy being part of it and being a producer on the show. And I don't know if you knew this, but you too could be a producer on the show. Just check out our Patreon page, and you can join me as an executive producer on the show.
There you go. Then you can have input into what we do here. 4 years, there have been a number of people who have spent their hard-earned time and effort into helping get this show on the air. At this point, there are a whole bunch to name, so I'm not going to name them. I'm just going to do the generic thank you to everybody, because unfortunately, there are some people whose paths I diverge from, so don't really have a way to contact them. But regardless, anybody who's been on this show has contributed. I am humbled that people want to help make this survive. Christopher Lazarick is someone I do want to point out. Every week for the past 4 years, I've heard his theme song. And the first day I heard that theme song, I absolutely loved it. And I think that song alone made this show more professional than it was, which hey, we needed it. And to your point, I think with a podcast especially, you do have to change. Change has to be a constant, and you have to be able to judge what your audience wants to hear from you. And sometimes that may be a lot, sometimes that may be a little, but just always being open to change is good. As far as the group here, Tracy, it has been great being able to record with you. As you mentioned, the podcast at one point was one of many things that I used to put a wedge between us. And I am glad that the podcast was the thing that, helped bring us back closer than I think either of us ever thought would happen.
Oh yeah, it's one of those things that I consider a success story. That's why I haven't minded talking about it. We went from honestly thinking we were never going to speak to each other again, and then wound up turning that around and healing. So I'm a big proponent of people can heal and change, guys. Sometimes losing a friendship is a wake-up call and can turn into things. I don't understand the people who would shut the door forever. And I think you and I, as far as our friendship has gone, is just a testament to that. And I am excited. I never really saw you using this as a wedge. I thought us just being people was the wedge. Like, we both did a really great job wedging between that friendship. So
if anything, I would like to think that if we had a chance to go back in time and talk to those two kids in 2017 who had quite the wacky summer, I think they would be quite proud of everything that we've done here. And Professor, yeah, I mean, our second date was your first time on the show, which, saying it out loud seems kind of weird, But it's also been great having you on the show, whether it's, on a recording like this or behind the scenes, being able to shoot ideas off of you. And most importantly, it's been great having a cheerleader. Someone to believe in you, someone to keep pushing you to, just like, you got something, keep doing it, go, go, go. So that more than anything, I appreciate it. And here's to hundreds and hundreds of more episodes.
500 more at least.
Yes. Especially if you guys buy our t-shirts and stuff like that. There's masks too. Just throwing it out there.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, masks. There's pillows, there's
coffee
stickers,
mugs,
pins, coffee mugs, travel mugs too. So if you want a regular glass coffee mug, the logo's on there. But if you want a coffee mug for your car, you got that as well. They got baseball jerseys, hoodies. It's from TeePublic. It will be in the show description as well. But thank you all for listening. Again, 4 years, 200 episodes and counting. We got plenty in store for the future. Coming up this Wednesday, you all are going to hear a conversation the professor and I had with her other partner, Bear, talking about his work in the legal profession, kind of a spiritual sequel to the conversation we had with Officer Ray Cyphers. We do reference that interview and talk about a couple of the same points. The week after that, on a Wednesday, we are going to be bringing Shelby, Warrior Princess, back on the show, this time from South Korea. The professor and I are going to be speaking with her about cosplaying because at Rose City Comic Con, the professor is going to be a Twi'lek.
That's right.
Yay!
Yes. And what I am most excited about, we got a couple of big remote shows that we are going to be recording. First of all, we are going to be doing a live, recorded live, not a live podcast, but recorded live at Rose City Comic Con. This will be the professor's first visit to a Comic Con, so it'll be cool to get her thoughts on that. And then the week of my birthday, we are heading up to Seattle, where we're going to be recording at the Pop Culture Museum. So we're going to be kind of walking through, kind of talking about some of the exhibits there, talking about Seattle. Maybe being me, I'm probably going to think I'm funny by saying a few Frasier jokes, but that is what it is. So we got plenty in store for the future. We got the Reverend coming back to Portland to help out with the haunts. So we'll be doing some live recordings with the Reverend there, including recording at the haunt itself. And maybe, just maybe, we can see Cooking with the Reverend on YouTube.
Woohoo!
Yes, I am slowly but surely getting my kitchen together because at the current, I am mostly using cast irons and a camping set that we still own. So pretty much when my pots and pans are no longer a social embarrassment, I will probably start recording cooking food. I really do have that idea of opening a vegan cafe at some point. So it honestly just makes sense to start practicing. And I also just want to show people it's not that hard or mysterious to cook plant-based, and it can be as unhealthy or healthy as you want it to be. So we will cover that broad spectrum that is unhealthy and healthy plant-based food, but it will all probably be very delicious.
All right. So thank you all for listening to us for 200 episodes. We hope you stick around for as long as you'll have us. If this is the first time you are listening, thank you again. And please subscribe and share the show on social media. Follow us on social media and our Discord to keep up with us throughout the week. You can find those links in the show description. With that, we bid you adieu.
Adieu.
Subscribe to Friends Talking Nerdy on iTunes, the Google Play Music Store, as well as Spotify. Remember to support Friends Talking Nerdy on Patreon. Goodbye, darling.